All right. First rule of this channel, we not talk about this channel. Second rule of this channel, this is not legal advice. So this is going to be the 2024 fantasy football offseason preview for the New York Giants. And generally speaking, I probably want to limit my exposure to bad offenses. And the Giants are like the worst offense in football, probably like going to project to be the worst team in football. There are going to be some exceptions to this. I do like Devin Singletary at his cost. He's probably not on my priority draft list. He's just outside of that. One of those guys that I will pivot to if he's available. And there's a few if and buts and maybes if he survives some of the camp news in general. So last year, 31 overall in passing yards, 16 in rushing yards, 30th in points per game. And again, Daniel Jones went down with an ACL, and then they were rolling whoever else they could roll out there. Our boy Tommy DeVito got that run at the end of the season. Last year, their offensive line was hilariously bad. I can bring this up. They had 85 sacks last year. Number 2 was the Carolina Panthers, who had 20 less at 65. So they went out and they basically tried to buy a brand new offensive line, and we're probably not going to know until the season starts if that offensive line is any good or not, because it's going to involve how well they gel together. It's just not a sum of the individual parts. So, all right. And then the other thing is to when I start breaking some of this stuff down, they had almost 2,900 yards passing last year. I'm going to jump that to 3,400. And then the other thing I will talk about is they had 25 combined offensive touchdowns last year. I'm going to jump that to 30. 20 passing. They had 15 last year. I'm going to jump that 5 to 20. And then the rushing touchdowns, I'm going to keep about 10 when I start breaking some of this stuff down. All right. Quarterback room. Daniel Jones, he is my quarterback 30. He will move down once we figure out what's going on with the Steelers. And he is 27 on Fantasy Pros, 138 overall. On Underdog, Best Ball League, remember it's a Best Ball League, just trying to get an understanding of where these guys' ADPs are. He's going at quarterback 30 with an ADP of 207. And then on ESPN, he's going at 218, quarterback 25. And if I'm buying Daniel Jones, I'm going after this rushing upside that he had in 2022. 700 yards rushing, 7 touchdowns. Remember, he's coming off an ACL last year, so I don't know how he's going to get there. And even if we push him to a career high, 3,400 yards passing, it's not just going to necessarily be him. It would be the team if he can't do it. But even if we push him to like 3,400 yards passing, probably not going to move the needle unless he can get that ridiculous rushing total to go up again. Career high was 2019 in passing touchdowns at 24. So yeah, he in what would effectively be the last year of his deal with the Giants. The out is after this year. He would have to have a career year in trying to save his job with the Giants coming up. So the other 2 guys to look at in this one, and this is purely from a peace of mind perspective, like if you're touching the toys, and I know a lot of people are probably going to be interested in Nabers here in a second. Drew Lock, he signed a 1-year deal with the Giants. Basically, the whole thing's guaranteed. He may be a little bit more interesting than Daniel Jones, probably not a lot. And then our boy Tommy DeVito, if he gets in the lineup again with the nimbly bimbly, he's going to be a little bit more interesting, even though he's probably going to be limited as a passer. His 2 weeks that he had fantasy relevance were a week 11, where he did 22 points, like 3 passing touchdowns, and then week 14, where he did 1 passing touchdown, but he also had 71 yards rushing. So he would be the interesting guy if he can get there again. I highly doubt it. There may be a little bit of the tank on when it comes to the Giants if Daniel Jones really falls apart early overall. All right, running back room. Like I said, Devin Singletary is the guy I'm really interested in all this. And I would say, think Rachaad White probably is going to be the second best offensive player they have, especially, or even if Darren Waller comes back, he still may be the second best offensive player they have behind Malik Nabers. So with Devin Singletary, he is my running back 19. That depends on the rest of the running back room, but right now he is my running back 19. I think that he will finish somewhere along the line of that volume-based RB2 attached to this offense if he gets the backfield. He's going 32 on Fantasy Pros, or running back 32 on Fantasy Pros, 95 overall. And then on ESPN, he is going 101 running back 33. And on Underdog, he is going running back 32 with an ADP of 109. And like I said, if he gets the backfield to himself, you're looking at something like Rachaad White, 1,000 yards rushing, 10 total touchdowns, plus or minus like 400 or 500 yards receiving, because he's just going to be the check down monster if he is like the third down trusted, receiving type back in this offense. So the two other guys to be worried about when it comes to camp would be Eric Gray. He's athletically going to be better than Devin Singletary, even though Devin Singletary is probably the better football player. He got a little bit of run at certain points in the season. They may give him the opportunity. I think he's a 5th round pick out of Oklahoma. I did like parts of his game to potentially be a bell cow. And then the guy that we're really going to worry about is going to be Tyrone Tracy Jr., the rookie from Purdue. I did not like the overall draft capital they put him. I think he's a 6th round pick when it comes to this. Yeah, 5th round pick overall. I would have liked it to be a 4th round pick. Remember, guys that go outside of round 4 are not a lock to make the team. So like Tyrone Tracy and Eric Gray, or would just be guys that we're looking to see how much of their role they're going to eat into Devin Singletary. Devin Singletary's contract with the Giants is a 3-year, $16.5 million. The out is after 2025. So he's going to be on the roster next year. This is like maybe running back one money. It's better than the Zach Moss deal that went to Cincinnati. I definitely could see him being the bell cow this year, the guy that they trust. The guy, again, that we're going to be looking on is how much and how soon Tyrone Tracy is able to eat in this. Tyrone Tracy is one of the again, like I said, intriguing guys that came out of the draft. I'm probably not going to win, probably not going to be a league winner coming out of the draft. This would be a guy to be looking forward to. Limited by the opportunities to score in the offense, even if he ends up taking the job. Probably one of those guys to be paying attention to. It's going to be a minimum amount of touches that he gets in week 1. I think it's about 6 for a guy to be a league winner. So if he may get to the point where he is draftable as a lottery ticket early on in the season, if someone else drafts him in your league and he doesn't do those 6 touches in week 1, or he does, then he would become more of a priority to take over the backfield from Devin Singletary at that point. But like I said, Devin Singletary at the cost that he's going to go to be that volume-based guy, 0 running back leagues, hero running back, like that would be a guy that I would really be looking forward to, expecting that the offense just can't be as bad as it was last year. And I would be overall thinking like Rachaad White, when Devin Singletary was able to get that backfield last season from with the Texans. And again, the Texans were better. He was very fantasy relevant from a volume-based standpoint. So again, I think that would be something to be looking forward to as a replacement level back, or in those certain builds with like the RB2 to him. And let's see, with Eric Gray, just to give you an idea what other people are thinking on Underdog, he is going at running back 80 with an ADP of 215. The limited athletic ability of Devin Singletary is probably bothering certain people. This is not going to be a good offense either. Expecting that either Eric Gray's athletic ability or Tyrone Tracy is going to eat into him. Tyrone Tracy on Underdog, he's going running back 56 overall with an ADP of 179. So this is a guy I'm going to be paying attention to in camp, and how much he moves up. That would move Devin Singletary down and potentially allow Tyrone Tracy to be in that running back 2 type of range coming into the draft overall. And then on ESPN, I don't even think Tyrone Tracy is listed. Wasn't totally looking for him overall. And then on Fantasy Pros, he is going 254, running back 73. So again, right now, not draftable, somebody that we're going to be paying attention to either to win leagues or to move Devin Tracy down from potentially being a priority draft guy. All right, wide receiver room, why everybody's here with Malik Nabers overall. He 5th overall draft pick. I'm going to say right now, probably should not be drafted. Is not going to win anybody any leagues this year. I will show you Garrett Wilson and Terry McLaurin, 2 guys that I think everybody can agree on are really good at football. And if the landing spot is bad, it just doesn't matter. So I was listening to Matt Harmon, I think it was, and some of the other podcasts. They're saying the biggest line on Malik Nabers right now is 950 yards receiving and 7 touchdowns. So at best, you're looking at a Jordan Addison type of year. And I can bring this up and we can talk about this. This is the best range of outcomes that you're going to get from a Malik Nabers is flirting with low end wide receiver 2 type of range. Jordan Addison last year, 70 receptions, 911 yards, 10 touchdowns. And remember, the Giants had 15 total last year, and I'm expecting that they'll be up to 20. That means that Malik Nabers is going to be somewhere in the line of half to a third of the total Giants passing touchdowns this year if he's able to hit the Vegas line. And again, if he gets like 1,000 yards receiving or even like 1,100, and we put the Giants up to like 3,400, he'd be getting a third of the total receiving yards when it comes to the Giants this year overall. Like very difficult to even hit that, because like if teams really just want to take him away and think like Garrett Wilson last year, they're going to take it away. Or even like Terry McLaurin, if the quarterback's not good enough, doesn't matter how good the player is. Between teams just letting him get low efficiency catches, and also the quarterback not being able to get him the football, like you're looking at a very difficult road. So he's going right now. He's my wide receiver 34. I moved him down. I moved Calvin Ridley up because there's a better chance that Calvin Ridley is going to be the number one in what appears to be a higher volume passing offense down there in Tennessee. These are both lottery tickets. I'm going to expect Calvin Ridley to be able to do better than like 950 yards receiving and 7 touchdowns. Then Malik Nabers to do that, attached to the Giants, who were, again, the 30th overall passing offense when it came last year. And expecting that Daniel Jones is probably not going to, light the world on fire with like 4,000 yards passing this year. So Malik Nabers, he is going 50 overall, wide receiver 26, which is a little too rich for me, considering I think there are other guys that have better roads to win me leagues. And that's the biggest thing when it comes down to this. Like, I may like Malik Nabers, you may like Malik Nabers. It just doesn't generally matter if he can't win me a league. On Underdog, he is going at wide receiver 20 with an ADP of 28.9. So again, like it would not surprise me that Malik Nabers is in that wide receiver 3 boom bust range, where he has those Deshaun Jackson type of years or season, where it's like 1 week he's winning you 1 week he's going to win you the game, and then the next week he's just like going to basically put up nothing in your stat line. And in that wide receiver 26 type of range, like I'm not going to be interested in that, because I can probably find someone that's going to be able to win me a league higher than that. If he was closer to wide receiver 34, adds that like boom bust type of guy, yeah, I could probably like roll him out there because I spent my capital someplace else, or he is going to be this very volatile flex for me. He is also going on ESPN in the range of wide receiver 26, 49 overall, probably different directions. On this one, I was looking at some of the other guys, and he's right next to Calvin Ridley on this one. Like, if I could jump up and get a Mark Andrews, I'm probably going to be happier about that in general, or even a Trey McBride. And it would not surprise me that this year that like a guy like Trey McBride just puts up more total points than Malik Nabers does, and he's a tight end. So like those are the things to be thinking about. Like those nimbly bimbly quarterbacks and those unicorn tight ends are probably going to have more value than high-end wide receiver 3s, low-end wide receiver 2s that tend to grow on trees. It doesn't matter how much I like the guy. It's a really bad landing spot. And I've learned doesn't matter what the price is on guys that are going part of bad offenses. They're likely not to score touchdowns, which means they're not going to win me leagues. And that's just the easy way to go about looking at that. So the other guys in this wide receiver room, and this is a little bit more interesting the last thing I will talk about with Malik Nabers is, because of how low volume that the Giants are likely to be this year. We talked about target share yesterday, trying to get Drake London in the 24% target range. With the Giants being as low passing volume as they're expected to be, you're starting to push Malik Nabers up into this like 30% range. There was only like, even if we count like CeeDee Lamb, Garrett Wilson, that really low efficiency season that he had last year with the Jets, Stephon Diggs, those type of guys, you're getting into this range where like he is going to be like a top 5 receiver if you're expecting him to get that level of volume, even if it's not efficient in a rather low passing volume situation. It just becomes really difficult for him to do anything more than to be a guy that's going to clog your bench, or be a guy that you're really not excited about rolling out there every week, versus the other guys that are spending on guys that are going to be part of better passing offenses, even if they're going to be like the number 2. And I'll bring up Fantasy Pros when we go hunt him down at about wide receiver or 50 overall. I guess I left this one up. When we look at like Malik Nabers here, the other guys that are going to be in this area that I would like more. There's Trey McBride, Malik Nabers, even like a T Higgins to be like the number 2 attached to like a higher volume passing offense. has more interest to me than Malik Nabers. Again, that over underline of like 957 touchdowns. We could probably put T. Higgins that over underline at about like 1,000 yards and 7 touchdowns attached to a better offense. So the possibility that T. Higgins is going to have like that high efficiency season, like 80 receptions, 1,200 yards, like 12 touchdowns, is probably higher with Joe Burrow than it is we're going to get that spike with Malik Nabers. And it doesn't even matter like what the talent is of Malik Nabers. It becomes a question of like Daniel Jones versus Joe Burrow. Like, who do you think is going to have that better season to support more toys in that offense? All right. Going back to the wide receiver room, Jalen Hyatt right now, he is falling down my rankings. He was like in the wide receiver 40s at one point before the Malik Nabers selection. He is my wide receiver 62. He's 82 on Fantasy Pros, 219 on Underdog. He is going at 213 overall. Wide receiver 95. Darius Slayton and Wan'Dale Robinson are higher than him overall on Fantasy Pros. On ESPN, Jalen Hyatt's right there. Darius Slayton's right above him in this offense. So again, where Malik Nabers looks like he's going to play would be that like Z slot player, which is very similar to like Jalen Hyatt, who would probably be more of a Z because of his size, not going to end up like fighting with somebody in press, may play the slot. Jalen Hyatt, 3rd round draft pick, the going into the second year, that draft capital is probably what intrigues me more than like they already know what they got in Darius Slayton. They probably need to go out and see what they're going to get in Jalen Hyatt. So he's going to move down my board. I have written in my notes, like there's going to be a redundancy with some of the players with where they can and can't play. Guys that can play the slot only, guys that are going to play the Z only, and then the few guys that are going to be able to play the X. And I have the Giants roster pulled up. So Allen Robinson that they signed, 6'2", 210, like he's old, he's dusted. Like I don't care about that. He's going to compete to play in that X position. You're looking at, where's it at? Isaiah Hodgins coming back, 6'3", 200 pounds to play that X. And then like Miles Boykin, that doesn't matter. Like the joke aside, 6'4", 220 to play that X position. One of these guys is going to be on the field and the other guys in this offense aren't. So when we start talking about like some of the guys that may have a little interest, like the dart throw of Darius Slayton, if he's going to be the number 2 in the offense with Malik Nabers, like in two wide receiver sets, like Nabers and who else is going to be on the field? That's going to be the question. It's probably going to be Isaiah Hodgins, Miles Boykin, or Allen Robinson at that point because they can come up and they can play their press. Wan'Dale Robinson, doesn't matter what you think about him. He may be sort of that like PPR, like wide receiver 3. And then Darius Slayton, the same thing with Jalen Hyatt, may end up being in that like boom bust wide receiver 3 type of range. The one thing I would say with Hyatt, if he gets the job, he may have just enough of the snap share to flirt with maybe getting into that like real life wide receiver 2 range, which means he may end up being a little bit more consistent from that like wide receiver 3 range than some of the other guys going on and with this one. And then outside of this is that's about all of the guys that I'd be interested. I wouldn't be interested in any of these wide receivers because of how low passing volume the Giants are likely to be. And if we put them up to like 20 passing touchdowns, any of these guys to win you a league, they got to get like a third to a half of the overall passing touchdowns with how limited availability there's going to be. It's going to be like really difficult. Again, I would probably put Malik Nabers. If I were to do an over-under line, it would be like 1,100 yards and 7 touchdowns. And that would be like at wide receiver 34. I think he's going to be underneath that, but I would push him forward to do that. And that would put him to get about like a third of the overall passing volume that goes to go through the Giants this year, which is absurd. I do think he's good. I just don't know how he gets there overall. And I'm trying to look at my notes real quick. That's how I would see it shaking out. And then tight end room, Darren Waller right now, like the only reason why I have him ranked is because when I left TJ Hawkinson, someone like wanted to know why TJ Hawkinson wasn't ranked. So I have Darren Waller ranked. I wouldn't have him ranked otherwise because I don't even think he's going to play this year. He didn't show up to OTAs, it says. So like they are kind of expecting him to maybe retire. If he does play, I would probably have to put him up all the way up at tight end 13 overall, just because he's one of the few guys that could theoretically be the number 1 in his offense. I'm not interested in him at all. Again, he's my tight end 26 because of all the uncertainty. He's tight end 33 on Fantasy Pros, 268 overall. On Underdog, he is going tight end 35, 215. And over on ESPN, he is going at like 132 overall, tight end 14, which, they're expecting he's going to play. I'm not expecting him to play overall. The guy to talk about, there's two other guys to talk about in this tight end room. The first one, like fourth round draft pick, Theo Johnston, he ran a 4.57, probably inline blocking Y from Penn State. I don't think he's going to be fantasy relevant this year, but because of that athletic ability and the draft capital, I could see him slotting in to be the starting tight end if Darren Waller doesn't come back, which would move him up into that range of like tight end 16 or so if he is the starter at the beginning of the year. The guy that I would be expecting to get the job if Darren Waller goes down, another third round draft pick, Daniel Bellinger. He was fantasy relevant all the way back in 2022 when he was a rookie, broke his eye socket. Then he was the number 2 last year with Darren Waller. Bad offense. He would be the guy. He's a 4.640 guy, third year breakout. I would move him probably all the way up back to tight end 13 if Darren Waller retires, because those opportunities are probably likely going to go to Daniel Bellinger as a tight end. Like if he can get around like 700 yards receiving and a third of the passing touchdowns because he plays tight end, he's going to be fantasy relevant. That's how high I would put him up there. He would be priority coming out of week 1 overall when it comes down to this. But that's about all I got when it comes to the Giants. And I'll see who's up next and come back probably on Monday.